Hello, food enthusiasts and political junkies, and welcome to another episode of Los Leftovers, the show where we talk about food, culture, and some news you may not have fully digested. I'm Huberto.
And I'm Daniel.
And we are your cultural connoisseurs. And today is a very special episode. Today we have our very first special guest in the building. But first, Daniel, what's on the menu?
So, for our appetizer today, we'll be diving into the world of Washington and therefore the potential ban of a certain social media app that we have grown quite fond of.
And for our entree, we're going to be having a conversation with our special guest over the current state of the Arizona Legislature and what to look out for. But besides that, could you dive in a little bit more into what we're eating today, Daniel?
Absolutely. So today we have lunch from Felicidad Catering. I got the flautas con arroz y frijoles. They were very well decorated with some lechuga, crema, salsa. The salsa was so good. And a very yummy dummy lemonade. What did you get?
And I got the quesadilla birria tacos with some frijoles, with some rice, topped off with a little bit of cilantro and onion and red and green salsa, and also a strawberry lemonade as well.
Oh, you're just trying to be me so bad.
Oh, now I'm ready to dive in. Daniel, should we take a bite really quickly?
Absolutely.
Cool. So we will take a quick bite and be back after this short break.
Well, welcome back. Sorry. Hope I don't have anything in my mouth. So today for our appetizer, we're going to be diving into a topic that I feel like a lot of people around our age are not necessarily concerned about, but just very in the know about. You know her. Yeah. We love her. Miss TikTok of ByteDance. Oh. Yeah, so currently right now, as like you probably know, like there is an effort in Congress to ban it.
You know, that really grinds my gears.
That really grinds my gears. Well,
yeah, no, when I heard about this, I was like, what a waste of like energy and time to like do something that literally nobody's complaining about except for you guys.
Truly. And the fact that like this has been going on for like since like the Trump administration, it's kind of crazy to me. Like we're still having these conversations, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's just politics because we're always talking about the same things. But in this case, it's very much clown foolery. Yeah. Because like you were saying, nobody else thinks that this is a big deal or like that this is a problem, like as in TikTok is a problem, except for our Congress people.
Yeah, because this is like, what, the second time they've tried to ban it?
Well, yes. I know that like Trump had initially tried some sort of like his own avenue of like trying to ban it, but like that just didn't work out. And then last year, the House passed a similar ban. It was named something else, but it was essentially kind of just, it would, again, force a sale of like TikTok. But it died in the Senate. They weren't as loud about it as they were last time. They were just very loud about it this time, to the fact that that bill moved through the House of Representatives in 4 days.
That is crazy.
When was the last time y'all saw a bill move that quickly? Not even in the like in Congress up there at the federal level, but at the like state level, that fast with like it wasn't even just like Republicans or just Democrats. It was like a very like bipartisan group of people. Yeah,
and that's what really gets me is like the bipartisan part, which means like Democrats, because I can understand maybe Republicans and maybe whatever narrative they're trying to pass with this, but like Democrats too, I was like, whoa, this is so left field.
It's so interesting. It's so confusing the way that like this was all like kind of like set up. It just came out of nowhere. Do you mean like President Biden, like after the Super Bowl, joined TikTok? So it's just like, it really felt like it was coming out of left field for me. And I also, from like different like news articles that I've read, it seems like it also really came out of left field for TikTok, the company itself. Like they were like, huh? Do you know what I mean? Like,
because they've had like this whole issue, like I guess the whole messaging and like narrative behind it is like just the data security, like that China is invading our privacy through TikTok.
No, yeah. I remember last year when there were like the hearings on social media apps and stuff like that, TikTok had agreed that they were going to partner with Oracle and they were going to be storing like US users' data on US soil. I don't really know whatever happened with that. I think that they are like still in the process of that. And I feel maybe because it hasn't happened yet, like the government was like, well, too late. We're going to take our own avenue to make sure that like we protect America. I'm like literally almost 100% sure. Don't quote me on this. That the bill is like protecting Americans Act, something like that, which I'm like, girl, from TikTok, BFFR, be for real. I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah. You know what I really found interesting?
What?
It was Nancy Pelosi's response to it. Now, everybody, if you know the word, say it along. We're going to make TikTok better. Tic-tac-toe winner.
Oh my God. The little the little smiles she did. She thought she ate that one.
I know. And
she
so
thought
bad.
she ate. She was like, I
was like, no, go ahead. Keep going.
I don't
please.
know. Sorry, Miss Ma'am. She ain't no diva. She ain't no diva. I don't know. It's very interesting. And I'm very confused with like everything that's going on. Biden was like, oh, if it ends up on my desk, I'm going to sign it. All these other stuff. Do you know what I mean? But it kind of feels like a Trojan horse to a certain degree. Like they're essentially forcing the sale of this company. But it doesn't necessarily just apply to TikTok. It's like to any other like company or any other sort of product that is like owned by an adversarial like country to the United States or company, which is really weird. And the fact that they're giving them, if it passes in the Senate and Biden ends up signing it, it'll give them 6 months to like sell, or else like they will fine like any app store in the United States that still like allows it to be there. It's just so messy. There's so much going on, and we're hearing from a ton of different people, a ton of different things. I never thought I would see the day that AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene agreed on something. On Twitter, they both posted something along the same lines of like...
It's one of those things where it's like, your enemy becomes our enemy... Or what's that saying?
The enemy of your enemy is your friend. Yeah. Something like that. It was so fascinating to see their tweets be kind of similar of like why they voted no. And they were like, well, we need to like protect Americans like free speech. Right. And this is against Americans' free speech. I saw someone on Twitter say it's one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The fact that they agreed on something, and that's crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like that we're seeing all this stuff happening right now. But there is one particular representative I have a bone to pick with. If you're on TikTok, you might know him. His name is Jeff Jackson. He is one of the representatives from North Carolina. Do you follow him on TikTok?
No, not really.
I actually unfollowed him because I saw a lot of other people doing the same thing. But I was like, I don't care for you too much anymore. Anyways, long story short. Jeff Jackson posted a video on TikTok essentially telling everyone, hey, I don't think this is going to get banned. And this is kind of like why this is happening kind of thing. He built his whole platform on TikTok just being like, oh, I'm just like you. Do you know what I mean? Like as a representative, connecting with people on the platform. He would like make videos about like the budget, all these other stuff, like in his little home office or wherever he's at. Just explaining different things that are happening at the Capitol. Then he did that, and everyone was kind of confused because in the video he didn't explain that he actually voted in favor of the TikTok ban, which is kind of like...
That's so sussy.
Make it make sense.
That is so sussy.
How are you saying, yeah, I don't think this is going to happen, and then you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't make any sense to me. It felt really shady. And I feel like it's a great lesson to learn that I feel like sometimes you really need to like hold accountable like your representatives. He isn't my representative, do you know what I mean? But best believe if I lived in North Carolina, his office would be hearing from me. because it's so absurd. What do you mean that you built your entire platform on this application,
Right?
and you're just kind of like not living for the people?
Like something's up behind the scenes. Because this reminds me a lot. Like, I don't know if you've seen the show Veep. So there's like this character in the show who's like trying to build like a political career, and so he gets kind of outcasted from the White House. Like, he was working in the White House, but then got outcasted. And so he decided to like build his platform on the internet and started like getting a lot of attention for it, and like actually had something. And then behind the scenes of it, he's trying to get back into the White House because, again, he's trying to build that political power that these people that are now in power are telling him the only way that you're going to be able to get back in is if you denounce the internet. And he was straight up like, I think one of the lines is, the internet built me. Like, these are my people. But then as soon as like they showed him just a little bit of, oh, you could probably get in with us, he was like, yeah, I'm denouncing it right here. So that's why I'm like, this is very sussy, because I'm like, if you've built your whole platform on this, why would you turn your back on basically the audience that like help you get your message forward, you know?
No, yeah. I've been like turning in my head. Like, I just, obviously, again, like we stated, and like several news articles have also stated, like, it was a big group, a big bipartisan group that was able to pass this bill. Had he voted no, it literally wouldn't have mattered.
Dang.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it still would have passed.
Yeah.
So it's like, why did you
Right.
Why'd you
turn
Jeff Jackson?
Yeah.
And then to make things worse, he releases a James Charles-esque,
oh my God,
literally YouTuber-esque apology on TikTok. He is literally wearing this like fleece hoodie, has this little t-shirt on. He's like, I apologize that my words had consequences. And to make things worse, it felt very gaslighty to me, because he was just like, I, as a representative, have been on hearings that have made me nervous about this application. Very much like, I know better than you. And I don't like that.
I don't know. To me, like, after this, I feel like his words hold no weight.
I don't know.
Like, he says one thing and then does a completely different thing, and then tries to like make up for it. No, yeah, it's very gaslighty.
I don't know. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's important for us, the people that vote these people in, to really hold them accountable. But like, I feel like it's also important to a certain degree kind of like form those relationships where you feel like you can. Do you know what I mean? For me, I feel like there are a lot of politicians and representatives in Arizona that are doing tremendous work that I really admire. And that I feel like I can trust. Do you know what I mean? And I feel for a majority of the part, I feel like for like the country, that's not always the case. Do you know what I mean? So I pose you this question. As a voter. What do you look for in a representative?
I think for me, it's a couple of things. I think definitely a sense of like community with like the people that you're representing. I think you can say a lot of things, and it's maybe my trust issues coming in, but like it's very hard for me to trust people, and I think like actions do speak louder than words. So when I see representatives like at actual events, like making it a priority, and then not only that, but continuing to fight at the legislature for it, then it's like, and then you're continuing to do that, then it's like, okay, you're building that trust with me. And then not only that, yeah, you're being a part of like organizations that are like trying to actually like pass like good, legislation and like good bills.
It's like that co-governance.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Because I mean, I don't expect like me to have like a direct line to a representative, but like at least I know that it's like if I went to an event and they were there, that they're gonna be a part of the like they don't have a sense of ego that it's like, oh, I got elected to power, so no one can touch me, and like can be very cold. Like
Kristen sent him out. Sorry, I had to. That was literally her.
No tea, no shade.
Oh my God, the way she swindled us.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like in this country at this moment, I feel like right now we're kind of in this like great reckoning.
Yeah.
When it comes to like politics and the way that we feel represented, or in this case, the way we don't feel represented. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there was like one member of Congress that's Gen Z. Do you know what I mean? And everybody else is not.
Yeah.
I feel like we're having this moment as a collective where we're kind of asking ourselves those questions of what do we want in a representative.
You know what's another thing that I like, which is I kind of see it in like AOC, which is why I love AOC, is the type of person that like is smart enough to like really be confrontational with questions when it comes to other representatives and other moments, but then also can stand on their own business and not be afraid and back it up too. You know, because I think like it's you have to be able to come at people and ask like the right questions to like why. So why are we doing this?
Seriously.
You know, and then sometimes it's going to happen to you too. So you can't be scared or shy about it. You know, you have to be able to be honest, genuine, and stand on your business.
Yeah.
So
stand 10 toes. Period. No, but I seriously agree, and I think we need more representatives that are truly working and fighting for our communities, like not effortlessly, but like always at the helm.
Right.
Always at the helm.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting tired of feeling swindled.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And this might be more of another personal thing for me, but I also like it that if there ever is a chance that I can have like a one-on-one with a representative, that it feels like I'm just talking to like a friend, that it feels like I like genuine and warm rather than like, oh, we're like two people and you know, we don't know what to say to each other. Like I want to feel like I'm like chopping it up with you. So
yeah, period. I totally agree.
Yeah. Speaking of back to the Four Horsemen and speaking of James Charles, that was my Four Horsemen, is the fact that James Charles really like eloquently.
Oh my God.
That
yes,
was
that
crazy.
Video,
I was like, the day
Twitter.
that we all agreed with James Charles, I was like, oh my God, it is the end times.
It is.
Like,
it is the end times, Lord. I wonder how this plays out. I hope that bill dies in the Senate, and I hope that, you know, we as a collective, again, continue to fight for better representation.
I hope so too. Well, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break and take another bite. And when we come back, we're going to have our very special guest coming into the studio. As we're talking about bills and passing things, we're going to be talking about what's happening at the Arizona State Legislature. So stay tuned.
No Chick-fil-A sauce?
And welcome back. Today we have a very special guest with us in the studio. Slaying all the way from the Capitol is Lucha's very own senior policy advisor, Lena Avalos. Thank you so much for being here, Lena.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Huberto. Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here with us. Well, you know, unfortunately, as you can tell, it's just me and you in the studio today. Daniel couldn't be with us for this portion. He's busy doing big back activities. So, yeah, we'll send him our warmest regards, and he sends all his love to you. But
Daniel, I will try and live up to you.
Yeah. Oh, he's somewhere in this universe just looking out for us. But, yeah, we're going to dive into the state legislature really quickly. But before that, I wanted to pick at your palate really quickly and just wanted to know what you had for lunch today.
I had a boiled egg and a piece of toast. Not exciting.
You know what?
Not exciting. Did you have something more exciting? I'm sure you did.
What did I have today? Well, I had Felicidad Catering. So it was delicious. And so if you haven't checked them out, please do so. But
unfortunately, we be killing bills. And so that's
you
my
just gotta
diet.
Be on the go.
That's my diet today.
Yeah. No, yeah. You just like eat a whole egg and you're just like,
Gotta go. Gotta pick up the next call. Yeah, unfortunately, that's we're in the thick of legislative session, my busiest time of the year. So, yeah, I will have a more exciting dinner. Do you have recommendations?
Ooh, definitely anything healthy. Always go healthy, so you can have the energy. I'm a salad and go type of guy sometimes.
It's Friday. I'm not having salad and go.
Oh, come on. Like, it's... Anyway, we have different opinions of salad and go, but I personally love them. They get me through the day sometimes. But yeah. So we're just going to get started really quickly so we can talk about what's happening at the Arizona State Legislature. We have a lot of conversations to have about it. But before we do that, can you just share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with our audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Lena Avalos. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the senior policy advisor at Living United for Change in Arizona. I'm so lucky and grateful to love my job. I'm so lucky and grateful to have talking to you, being on a podcast, to be a part of my job. And I feel really passionately about what I do. And I'm grateful that I love the work that I do and that I love my job. I got involved in politics because my family is directly impacted by the criminal justice system. And particularly, I got involved during college, where I started working at a criminal justice reform nonprofit called Reinventing Reentry, where we focused on educating people about what it was like to get out of prison. What do you know about what it's like to get out of prison?
Oh, I know nothing.
Okay, well then you're about to learn something.
Oh, fun.
So I started this during my junior year of college, working for Reinventing Reentry, where we put on what was called a reentry simulation. It was quite literally, you would go through a process of what it was like to get out of prison, to find a job, to go through probation, to have to meet certain requirements. And ultimately, the purpose was to educate folks about what it was actually like to have to transition back into society after being incarcerated, and more importantly, to shed light on the structural barriers, the policies that are in place that ultimately lead to so many people going back into the prison industrial complex. So I loved working at this nonprofit. That's where I got my start. And I feel really passionately about criminal justice policy as someone whose family is directly impacted. And the more that I did the work with the nonprofit, the more that I wanted to go into the policy field. I felt like policy was where I felt like my place was in the movement, in politics. So I have this moment where I was in college and my boss took me to a committee hearing, right? I live in committee hearings now. That is essentially a main component of my job. But I was a student. I was sitting in a committee hearing at one of the criminal justice committees, hearing a policy be debated around whether or not we should lift the policy that requires pregnant women to be shackled while they give birth in prisons. And during this committee hearing, I got to hear the debate. I got to hear what it was actually like to debate policy. And I got a tour from Representative Athena Salmon, former Representative Athena Salmon, who I had the pleasure of working with during her tenure at the legislature in my capacity at Lucha. And I think it was that moment where I was like, okay, policy is what I want to do. This is the field within politics and within organizing and building power that I ultimately wanted to be a part of and lead. And so, I mean, now looking to where I am now, of being at the legislature a lot of days out of the week, being that person in the committee room at the microphone, advocating on policies, that's ultimately where I wanted to be, and it's ultimately where I am now. So I'm incredibly grateful for that, and that's ultimately how I got here.
Well, that's awesome. No, as someone who's been going to the hearings sometimes a lot, it's really crazy in there. But I guess what I'm wondering is what's your connection then with Lucha? How did you come across Lucha, and what made you want to be a part of that organization?
Yes. So after my time at Reinventing Reentry, and I was like, okay, I want to do policy. I want to do policy and state level policy. There's something about the state capitol and doing state level policy and politics that I really liked, probably because I grew up here. I'm from here. I'm a third generation Arizonan. I love my state. I love my communities. There's nothing better than getting to dedicate your life and your life's work to bettering your home state, a state that you love, a state that your family has lived in for generations. So I got an internship at Creosote Partners, which is a progressive values-based lobbying firm in Arizona. At the time was the only progressive and values-based lobbying firm. And so I was a policy analyst intern at Creosote Partners, where Lucha was a client. And now I'm the client. And I did work with Lucha. I did work for Lucha throughout my capacity as an intern at Creosote. And at the time, I was still focusing a lot on criminal justice specific policy. And so in terms of subject matter, it was a bit different doing work for Lucha. But I found a deep passion in that Lucha primarily focuses on economic and racial justice. And Lucha was born out of the ashes of SB 1070, the Show Me Your Papers law. One of our biggest accomplishments is raising the minimum wage via Prop 206 in 2016. And the more that we do this work, it becomes clear that all the issues that we care about around the environment, around criminal justice, around policing, are inherently connected and come back to economic justice. So when we want to talk about building a world where less people are going to prison, where when we want to talk about creating safe and just communities, what we're really talking about is creating an economy where everyone, regardless of race, regardless of immigration status, has the resources to live a life with dignity and to thrive. And ultimately, at the center of creating a multiracial democracy, a multiracial participatory democracy where you know where your tax dollars are going, where your tax dollars are going where you want them to go, where your tax dollars are actually coming back to you via investments in our communities. So ultimately, I still do criminal justice work. I'm just doing it on the onset of wanting to create a better world at the onset.
Right. No, yeah, and it's like I think it's really interesting that you say that like it starts with the economy, because I think like that's probably like where most of like the criminalization happens, is because of like the lack of resources, the lack of like money, and the way that like people have to resort sometimes to like, you know, terrible things in order to like actually survive. And so I think if you
crimes of survival,
no, exactly. That's what we call it. So I think like if you set up like this world where like everyone can thrive, where everyone can have like even just the basic necessities, which is like housing, water, food, healthcare, just the bare minimum for us to even exist and to actually like contribute to society, we'll probably see like the decrease in criminalization.
Yes.
Because, you know, no one wants to go to prison. No one wants to make these decisions, you know, that jeopardizes their future. But like sometimes it's, you know, the only choice that they have. So I think that's like really interesting that like, you know, the economy is like kind of the part of the center of like all of this.
I think that's why a lot of people of color get involved in politics from the onset as well, is because of the criminal justice system, is because of policing, is because communities of color are disproportionately over policed and over criminalized, and we're looking for a way to fix that. And there are ways within criminal justice policy, right, like mandatory minimums, sentencing, conditions of confinement, reentry, what I did, right, focusing on reentry, focusing on how are we getting more people like justly transitioned back into society. But again, what I get to do now is create that world where we don't need prisons one day,
right,
where people aren't having to commit crimes of survival, where we're not living in a world or society that is ruled by retribution and by vengeance, but is rooted in community care.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I can already like imagine that world, and I'm like,
we're doing it.
Yeah, honestly. And I really do see like us like living through that. Like we're already doing the work, and we're starting to see like the steps getting there. So I'm very hopeful for the future. But yeah, I think one thing that I wanted to, I guess, also ask you is like, now that you're working at Lucha and you're creating this legacy, since we're talking about legacy, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I mean, I have big dreams, and also I'm here as a young brown woman of color. There's not a lot of young women of color in the policy space. When we go to committee, we're a lot of times the only brown people there.
True. Yeah.
I sit in rooms and spaces with powerful people where sometimes I'm the youngest, sometimes I'm the brownest, sometimes I'm the only young woman of color in the room. So I also sit here as an investment of building policy expertise, of building power through policy within communities of color. Like I am a living example of that.
Do you see yourself like always doing policy work, or do you see yourself actually like being a part of the system and like being a legislator one day?
Gosh,
and, like,
I always say never.
Never?
I would say never. I don't really think that that's something that I want to do. I never say never, because who knows where life is going to take you.
Right.
I didn't think that I was going to be at Lucha. I didn't think that I was going to be doing policy work even at the beginning. Like I was not interested in policy. I was more interested in like the activism aspect of it, and was able to find my home in policy and my home at Lucha within policy throughout the years. So we'll never say never. Do you want to run for office?
You know,
would you ever?
So I've thought about that too, and I've always been like, I've always said never too, because I think it's just like such a big decision, and like you're like there's so much at stake, and then but knowing my life, I'm gonna say never, and it's gonna be on camera right now, me being like, I never want to run for office. Watch me become the president. Watch me by like just fate, like I end up like becoming the president of the United States, and I'll be like,
I know the future POTUS.
Hey.
For me, I don't think so. I really like the policy aspect. I also like being able to not be held to the standards of the typical way that we think of politicians, of the of the system right now. But
Right.
I do think that there's merit to changing the system from the inside. We have so many legislators who are representations of working people who are actually working people and are working on changing the system from the inside.
Yeah.
So I love the policy piece. I'm happy. I
Yeah.
think that this is ultimately what I want to do. And I think the legacy that I want to leave is, of course, through passing good policies that create better lives for working people and for people of color. But I think I also want to do something a bit deeper, which is create a home, a political home and a policy home for people directly impacted, young people of color, to create policy expertise, to be the people actually in the room making the decisions or crafting the solutions that decision makers are pushing. So ultimately, that's what I want to do. I want there to be a room full of me's. I want there to be a state full of young people of color, directly impacted people at the Capitol, where it's not an abnormality to see young people of color in the committee rooms.
Right.
It's the norm.
It's like the norm. Yeah. No, yeah. And I think we definitely will get there. I mean, listen, I used to think like committee hearings were super boring. And then
You like
I don't
them
know.
now?
They're kind of interesting. Low key, I was thinking about it. I was like, what if I just
done my
went for
job.
funds? Yeah, like, for funsies and just a random bill. Just like here. I don't know. I'm a person that like loves to think. And so when there's like always two sides to like an argument and stuff, like I always end up choosing a position and I stick to it. But like just hearing other people's like ideas, I think it's just so fascinating. Because it's like everyone is so affected in so many different ways. And it's like we're all trying to get to like this one goal, which is like we all just want to be taken care of. But how we do it, interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a big piece of it too, is a lot of times policy is boring. Like oh goodness.
You still have to teach me how to read a bill.
I know. I always prepare myself. I'm like, okay, how do I not put people to sleep when I'm talking about these things? So that's also a big thing about doing this work, is how are we approaching policy in a non-traditional way,
Right.
in a way that actually engages people and makes it interesting, and is not trying to speak at it from such a high level that excludes people.
Right.
Because if we're talking about it in a way where people don't understand, policy isn't accessible.
Right.
So like that's also a main component of my job and of me being here, is making policy accessible.
No, yeah. And it's funny that you say that too, because like you're saying, like you see yourself just like doing the policy because that's like where your strong suit is. This is like my strong suit. It's like the entertainment. It's like the buffoonery and like being able to just like have you in the studio with us and like be able to like talk to our audience out here. And yeah, just make sure that like everyone is informed and like involved in some way or capacity. But yeah, I wanted us to just steer a little bit into what is actually happening at the Arizona State Legislature. But before we do that, as someone who, didn't go to school for policy or didn't go to school for like, government or anything like that, I think that sometimes where we lose the connection is people don't really understand how the Arizona State Legislature works. Mm-hmm. It can be very overwhelming. It can be very complicated. At least that's how I felt even when I first started, doing activist work. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind just kind of explaining like just a really quick crash course of like how the Arizona State Legislature works? Like, what does HB 1234 mean? When I see it on my ballot, like what does any of that actually mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's super important too, is like, how does our government even work? What are the main components of it? That's so important to understand, for us to understand how we can make a change within that, and how we can have an impact. So right now we're in legislative session. It's the busiest time of the year for me, definitely. So this is a high point for me, getting to be here.
Yeah.
And the state legislature is a manifestation of a form of government, right? It exists at the federal level and at local levels. At the federal level, we have our president, Supreme Court, U.S. Senate, Congress, those bodies. And we also have those bodies at the state level. And primarily, and Lucha's been building power at every level of government for over a decade now. I work primarily at the state level, and we work to affect policy primarily at the state level. So I know the state government and the state legislature very intimately. That's the main component of my job. So every year, the people that we elect, our state senators and our state representatives, convene during legislative session. That's what it's called, legislative session, for about half the year, where their main purposes are to create and pass laws, and the main purpose being that they pass a state budget, which is essentially, well, actually, should I ask you, what's the state budget?
So it's basically, from my understanding, it's I as a taxpayer, pay my taxes in order to fund certain things in my community. So, for example, like schools, roads, et cetera, et cetera. And so the state budget, and the way that works is you kind of pick and choose like how much money goes into basically the different programs and like the different areas of like what makes the economy. Like, let's say it was like $100. $10 is going to go to public schools. $10 is going to go to roads. $20 is going to go to, I fear, sometimes it'd be like that, police. But yeah, it's like picking and choosing like where your money is going.
Right.
So that
is exactly right.
Okay, cool. I'm not that dumb. Great.
You're not dumb at all. That is exactly right. And again, like goes to the core of why do people care? Why should people care? Yeah. We should care because these are our representatives. It's our money. It's our house, our capital. And we should care what goes on there. And I think like the tax piece particularly, people don't know where their taxes go. A lot of times people don't know what we mean when we say state budget. Like, okay, it's a budget for the state. But ultimately, it's your dollars going towards certain things. Yeah. So a big piece of, again, the work that I do is providing opportunities and empowering communities to make their voices heard within these decisions that are ours to hold, that we elect people to act in a certain way. So that is essentially what our legislative session is. We're currently in it. The end date is always a TBD. I can never plan a summer vacation because I don't know if we're going to be in session or not. So essentially goes on through half the year. And they have to pass the state budget by the beginning of the next fiscal year, which is June 30th. July 1st is the beginning of the new fiscal year.
And then what happens if they don't?
If they don't pass the state budget by the beginning of the next fiscal year, then we go into what's called a government shutdown, which I don't think has happened, at least in the state of Arizona, for a very, very long time. But that is ultimately a time presser in that they have a certain amount of time to get it done. And also that's essentially their main function. The rest of the things that they do and parade around of like creating laws, yes, we push state legislators to create laws that help communities to create solutions to problems that we're having. But at the end of the day, that is their main function, is to invest our tax dollars and pass a state budget.
So I definitely want to hopefully one day have you back because I think there's a lot about taxes.
I'm never coming back.
Oh, no. Okay. Dang, I didn't do my job. No, but no, I definitely do want to talk more about like taxes eventually because I think there's so much to dive into there. But I think for now, when you're talking about like legislators passing bills as like also being a main function, I think for me, what I want to know is like what are some bills or like resolutions, good or bad, that we should be like paying attention to right now. I know that recently Lucha did introduce a bill surrounding paid family medical leave. Would you mind elaborating?
My favorite, yes. And it's also amazing. I have favorite bills now. Like when I first started, we introduced one. Right. So that was, which was paid family medical leave, which is why it's my favorite. Okay. It's the first one that I worked on in my capacity at Lucha. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about bills that are moving. There's so many of them, too many of them. Yeah. Both good and bad. Some really amazing and some really awful.
Should we start with the good or the bad?
What do you want to do? The good?
Let's start with the good.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about paid family medical leave.
Okay.
Because I think I kind of understand what it is, like from the title, which is, so my understanding, it's you get paid to leave to be with your family.
Yes.
And so is that?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Essentially, that's what it is.
Okay.
And yeah, so Lucha has been working on paid family medical leave for a really long time. We introduced with lawmakers a bill that we have now named the Arizona Thriving Families Act, which would provide at least 24 weeks of paid leave to anyone for significant life events. Think maternity, paternity leave, right? You have a new family addition, whether you're having that child biologically, whether you're adopting, wanting to provide that leave and that job security where you can take time off to be with your family and to grow and expand your family and still have that security of a paycheck. And also that security of not being retaliated against your employer for taking that leave. There's a lot of economic indicators that exist that show that women are at below labor force participation because of the fact of inaccessibility of things like paid maternity and paternity leave, lack of access to childcare. And so ultimately, the goal of paid leave, the goal of the Arizona Thriving Families Act is to provide that security to our working families. Because it's not also just having a child, it's getting sick. It's something, an accident happening. It's a loved member having their last moments on earth in this world. So it's this policy that ultimately is a manifestation of wanting families to live with dignity, wanting workers to be able to live with dignity. And the fact that a lot of workers, if they miss a paycheck, can't pay their rent right now. So ultimately, it's a vision for the future. It's a vision for a future where all workers have that security, have access to a significant time of paid time off for major life events. And our working families deserve that.
Yeah.
So that is Arizona Thriving Families Act. It's something that I've worked on for many, many years. It's something that's personal to me, in that a lot of our small business owners, a lot of our self-employed people have zero paid time off in general, right?
Yeah.
So I get at least 5 paid sick days because of Prop 206, because of raising the minimum wage and requiring every employer to provide 5 paid sick days. That doesn't exist in every state, right? That exists because of Lucha, and because of Prop 206 in Arizona in 2016. And my mom is a small business owner. She's a sole proprietor. She's a hairdresser, the best woman I know. And 2 years ago, my grandma was put into the hospital on a ventilator for COVID pneumonia. And I watched my mom go to work almost every day while her mom was dying in the hospital. And because if she didn't go to work, if she didn't do someone's hair, she wasn't getting paid.
Right.
There's no 5 paid sick days. There's no paid leave. There's no benefits for people that are sole proprietors or self-employed unless you seek them out.
Right.
And so that was a major moment in my life where paid leave was given personal meaning. And I know that if we had paid leave in this state, that my mom could have been at the hospital with her mom, who now is no longer here. So she came to the Capitol with me to introduce this bill this year, where we had an amazing community event where we were able to talk about what a world would mean and look like if we had paid family medical leave for all. And that was really special. So that's why this is my favorite policy.
Honestly, like, I think this one is also very personal to me. Like, hearing like what this bill will do is like, I just think about my mom too. Cause my mom is like, she's worked her whole life as like a janitor or like a housekeeper. And like, she's also getting older, and the way that like her body's just like malfunctioning now because, you know, she's on her feet all day. And yeah, even my mom had a freaking surgery recently. And she was like, I can't miss work because I can't pay my bill. And I'm like, literally, to the point that I was like, I will literally pay your bills if I have to.
Yeah.
Because you should be taking care of yourself. You should be at home healing and not being on your feet and like working for 8 hours. So I'm very hopeful for, like, I really want to see where this bill goes. Like, I think it's very important for a lot of families. I think that it's already impacting like our families. So yeah, no, I like, thank you so much for like introducing like what that bill does. Hopefully like people can actually like get more involved with the organization and like actually like see where paid family medical leave goes.
We're working towards passing it.
Hey.
It is difficult within the current political landscape.
Yeah.
And that a lot of Republican legislators don't want to have conversations around paid family medical leave, don't want to prioritize it. When in reality, that's what people want.
Right.
That's what the people are wanting, are policies like paid family medical leave.
Yeah, so here on the show, we have this thing called Republican shenanigans. And so I think, like, you know, they tend to do a lot of these shenanigans where they don't want to have these conversations about, like, paid family medical leave or even, like, talking about, like, immigration. And so, you know, I've been recently hearing that there's been, like, this wave of, like, anti-immigrant legislation that's been coming out of the state legislature. Your theory, like, why do you think that like we've been seeing this wave happening?
Yeah, so I don't even know if this classifies as a shenanigan. I think should be classified and packaged as just
full on blasphemy,
pure hate.
It's blasphemy,
pure hate and racism.
Yeah.
And we're bearing the brunt of it and being in Arizona, absolutely, and being people of color in Arizona. I think that people are wanting and have been wanting comprehensive immigration reform, have been wanting solutions to the humanitarian crisis that is happening at the border. I know Lucha worked on Pathway to Citizenship 2 years ago at the federal level. And I think that the far right agenda and extremists and the GOP in its entirety right now is packaging hate and is providing or is propping up racial profiling, over criminalization, over policing of communities of color as a response to what is happening at the border. And I mean, we believe that that is just completely wrong because we've lived through SB 1070. We know exactly what happens when these kinds of policies get passed. Yeah. When we're seeing a response to immigration being rooted in arresting people and opening up the door for arresting people for what they look like, for how they speak, for your perceptions of them. And so that's what we're seeing ultimately right now. We're seeing the return of SB 1070. Yeah. We're seeing Republicans use this moment to further their political agenda. And I think they have probably been waiting for a moment like this, have been waiting for their messaging to penetrate the public narrative and to be able to manipulate and ultimately prop up their messaging of being anti-immigrant and being racist. And that's what these bills ultimately are.
Yeah.
And they're not being talked about that way, but we're talking about it that way.
Yeah.
Because it is exactly SB 1070. It's worse than SB 1070. It is their legislation that would give police officers the ability, I mean, to come in here right now and ask us for our citizenship status.
Bruh.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
So it is one of the most egregious. I remember reading it for the first time earlier this year, sitting on my desk, sitting at my computer, and just being like, wow, we're back in these days. They're bringing us back to the days of SB 1070. And I remember like being in a car with my mom as a little girl and her saying, okay, if we get pulled over, just so you know, like we are here legally if you are asked. And I was like, what do you mean? And so to be given like that new meaning, like as a girl back in 2010, like now to live through that and be and to now be back there is really jarring and is really disappointing. We deserve better. We deserve better from our representation because people don't want racist policies. Maybe they want solutions, and I know they want comprehensive immigration reform, but people don't want racial profiling of communities of color.
Right. No, yeah. And like, honestly, like, it's funny because I think we both kind of have a similar story with that. Like, I remember also being a kid during that time. And even my mom was like considering leaving the state. And it was like, and I'm like, I grew up in California. I was already like dealing with like, oh, I just moved from California and I'm settling into now Arizona and like now making friends. But then all of a sudden 1070 happens. And like now all of these people, all of my friends are like, we're thinking of leaving. And then my mom's telling me we're thinking of leaving too. And just having that like anxiety at all times to just be like will they not take my mom away? Like it's ridiculous. Yeah. To be honest, like no one should be living like that. No one should be living at the edge of their seat, wondering whether or not they're going to be pulled over and then just one day just life is done. Yeah. You know? So what has been, with these bills that have been coming out, what have you seen from our community members? What has been like the outcry from community members surrounding this bill?
I think I've seen a lot of things. I've seen anger. We've seen some fear again, like we were talking about that fear of families now being afraid of being separated again. But I also think I see hope. I see hope. This is not 2010. This is not the Arizona of 2010. We are here. Communities of color have built sustainable and permanent political power in this state. And that's because of SB 1070. So I think that also, if this were to happen again, we would rise up. We would rise up and we would continue to build because we're here and we're here to stay. And our political power is now over a decade old. So I think that I'm seeing hope in that we can defeat this. We know that we can defeat this. And so that's what I'm at least using to ground myself in this moment is that I know that we can defeat this. I know our communities will come together. They have done it before, and we will do it again.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. I completely 100% agree. And well, also on the subject of hope, well, what are you hopeful for this legislative session? And then where do you see legislative session happening next year? Can you talk about a little bit about like Lucha's priorities and like what do you hope to see happen by next year?
Mm-hmm. I think that, again, the political landscape makes it a bit harder to be hopeful in terms of policies getting over the finish line. I know that we had major budget victories last year within the state budget with Governor Hobbs in office. We had $150 million going towards the Housing Trust Fund, a total of $225 million being allocated towards housing and homelessness. But where we are now is in a budget deficit, right? We were talking about taxes earlier. I mean, like, what happens if we don't have that money?
Yeah.
And why don't we have that money? Why don't we have that money? Do you think? We're at $1 billion deficit. Looking at $1 billion deficit.
Yeah, I think if you're in a deficit, it's because you're misspending your money. You're in the wrong things. It's like if I like budget my money and then I'm like, oh, why am I negative? Well, maybe it's if you stop buying like random little trinkets for your house, then maybe you would actually have something to feed yourself, like
mood. We can talk about our spending. We can talk about our spending habits later.
About it.
But in terms of the state, yes, yeah. Right? Like, as in, there are things that we believe you should not be spending money on. Right? Like, do we need to be spending $1 billion on the prison and industrial complex? No. Is that helpful to our communities? No.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, why we don't have money is because people are not paying their taxes. People are not paying their fair share of taxes. And who is not paying their fair share of taxes are the wealthy and corporations. We have created a tax code. The state government has created a tax code where the wealthy and corporations are not paying their fair share. That is why we're in negative $1 billion. So we'll see in terms of the state budget this year. I think that I'm always hopeful with the governor in office in that we're prioritizing no cuts to education, healthcare, housing, the things that working families absolutely depend on. We're trying to find solutions in terms of this budget cycle. And I think we are focusing on how do we get that money back? How do we get the people's money back? And so I'm actually more hopeful for next legislative session because we're in a pivotal election year. We have so many things that we want to do. We have so many things that we can, and that the policies are out there: affordable higher education, affordable childcare, paid family medical leave. And we can't accomplish those things unless we tax the rich and corporations and make them pay their fair share. And we can't make that happen unless we flip the legislature and we put Democrats in power. So I'm hopeful for a year of continuing to fight for the policies. And I'm more hopeful for hopefully building a political landscape where we can actually make good things happen for our communities, where we're not fighting racist anti-immigrant bills that put the civil liberties of every person of color in this state at risk. We are fighting for things like paid family medical leave, like rent stabilization, like affordable higher education and childcare. And so I'm hopeful for a successful electoral cycle. I'm hopeful for going into 2025 being able to make real change happen and make real good happen.
You know what? So am I. I'm actually very hopeful. And I'm also very excited to see where the work leads you. So I'll definitely be staying tuned, and I'll keep up with you, and then we'll definitely talk more about taxes. And I'll definitely got to have you back on the show to talk about taxes because I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of thoughts.
We don't talk about taxes.
Hey.
Taxes aren't boring.
Hey, hashtag that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Lena. But really quickly before we wrap up and send you back to the Capitol to kill more bills or to fight for them, can you tell the audience where they can get involved with Lucha and the organization?
Yes. Please join La Lucha. You can visit luchaaz.org, become part of the movement. And if you join and become a member, you can have a say in the policies that I work on and the policies that I fight for and that we fight for as an organization, as a movement, and as a larger community. So I hope that you will join us, visit La Lucha, become a member, and La Lucha sigue.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Lena, once again. We are going to take a really quick short break. I got to go and do big back activities with Daniel really quickly. So stay tuned.
Well, that was an amazing second episode in the bag and first interview of the season.
Woo!
With an amazing, special, lovely wonderful, beautiful guest.
God, she's such
Lena.
a queen. Love her.
I've always loved her. I am her biggest fan. I feel like we're gonna have her on again whenever we have any questions about policy, need some of those things answered and dissected. Yeah, she's badass. That was great.
Well, that was it for this episode, but tune in next time. And if you still need to catch up on all of our episodes, you can visit us on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify to hear all of our episodes. But until next time, remember, when we eat together, we win together.
Toodles.